When setting the stage to practice academic English, we must create opportunities for students to swirl it. Students must practice speaking, writing, reading, and listening, and most importantly, interacting in all subject areas every day in every classroom. As you reflect on the first half of the year, what percentage of time was allotted for students to practice each of these domains in class? We are going to speak further about how you can create conditions for your classroom to make this happen, and how you can facilitate interaction among students. As we think about being intentional in our lesson planning to create spaces for students to speak, we must think about the purpose for language. What is the purpose in which we want students to speak about this subject? Are they going to repeat what they heard or add on to what they heard or even agree or disagree? These are sentence starters for students to practice doing those functions of language. Are they even going to list steps in which they accomplished a task or going to accomplish a task? Mini lessons are a great way for students to practice under a less rigorous task and practice the actual language in which you wish them to practice. There's a language for collaboration card that links you straight to this PDF for academic language discussions. You can add these to a document or your Google Classroom or your presentation as you create spaces for students to collaborate and have academic discussions. You may even want to add the academic vocabulary that you wish for them to use. When we think about writing tasks within our subjects, are we creating word walls that highlight the academic language we wish our students to use, or even anchor charts that help them solidify their thinking as they begin the writing process? Are there sentence stems or language frames for them to use the academic language we wish for them to use? And dictionaries and translation tools are always readily available electronically. Creating spaces for students to collaborate around ideas or graphic organizers, these are all ways in which we can create writing tasks while also being intentional about the quality and the expectations of those writing tasks. Now, what do we have students reading? Textbooks, articles, poetry, charts, graphs, diagrams, or models. How are we having them maybe do breakouts? Here's one example of having them annotate what they're reading, right? Something that they squared with that they already know. So they've already read or the chart and they've squared something that they already know, and then they circle something that they have a question about. And they can then go out into a breakout room and share that information, or you can create opportunities for them to share it via Google Classroom or even a Jamboard. These are all examples of what you can have students do as they read or during their reading process. Also examples of types of reading, but also this activity down below is Save the Last Word for Me is an example of what you can have students do when reading a complex text or something that is thought-provoking. Students read a text or article and then choose 3 or 4 passages in which speak to them or deepen their thinking. They then share that one line that they've highlighted, and they go around the group and each person shares why they think that line was chosen. And then the person that chose the line that shared initially will then share why they chose it. So they're the last one to speak about why they chose that line and why it deepens their thinking. When we think about listening tasks, there are so many ways in which students are listening, but what do we have them do with what they're listening to? Are they maybe watching a video and answering questions, or podcasts, or pair sharing? This is a few examples in which students can listen and then do something with what they're listening to. So this listen and sketch, they listen to maybe a passage or they're listening to a story, and students sketch what they're envisioning while they're listening to that story. They then share about their sketches and kind of compare and contrast all of the thinking that happened while they were listening. This text reconstruction activity, there's a video how you could do this in your classroom. Also, your instructional coach is a great resource to support you. Edpuzzle is another way. You can take videos, upload them to your classroom, and while students are watching the video, it stops and asks them questions, and it keeps track of what they've listened and how they've answered their questions. As we've talked about speaking, writing, reading, and listening, interaction has been interwoven into all of these pieces. As we're being intentional, this is just to wrap up many of the things that I've already talked about: how safety, clear expectations, creating norms or doing norms checks, making sure that you're implementing things and practicing those expectations, creating a collaborative culture where swirling is normal. It is always expected as we talk about and we dive deeper into content. Routines, procedures, really outlining and highlighting the targeted language that you used, and practicing with low cognitive demand tasks before you up the rigor. Refer back to our January 2021 EGUSD EL newsletter, and you can see this resource that helps you identify some ways in which you can call on students and keep track of their participation in the class.